Gorgeous
No.
photo, Jen.
All right. Well, good morning and welcome, everyone. It's our first call, community call of 2024. My name is Jennifer Britton. I'm the CEO and founder of Potentials Realized. We're well known for our work in group and team coaching and like to call ourselves a one-stop shop for all things group and team coaching. So you can find us at GroupCoachingEssentials.ca. We continue to offer ICF CCE approved training in two pathways: certification for group coaches and certification for team coaches. And as many of you know, I wrote the world's first book on group coaching back in 2009. So this has been my passion. I have seen how group and team coaching have transformed organizations, communities, and even nations. That's a tall order, but when you do this work for long enough, you really get to see amazing progress. And so as part of our work here at Potentials Realize, we love to facilitate these ongoing conversations, typically on a bi-weekly basis, to support you as a coach in evolution. So we're going to start off today with the topic of 5 ways to get traction as a coach in 2024. So whether you're working internally, whether you're working as your own solopreneur coach, maybe you're coaching on a bench, there are so many different options that we can be following. And so I think really discernment as well as traction is critical in an environment that is ongoing. So our first call of the year is going to be sharing with you some of these things that we dive into deeper in our own training. So just to let you know, this is our week where we have many programs starting, restarting. Yesterday, we kicked off again our Team Coaching Essentials. Early this morning, I kicked off our neuroscience learning and experiential approaches. We have our coaching supervision group, which meets typically the first Thursday of every month, but this month we're meeting the second Thursday. As you may or may not be aware, supervision is a requirement for those applying for the ACTC, the new advanced credential in team coaching. And so we really like to encourage coaches to have this as a best practice. And actually supervision and that reflective pause is something I'm going to talk about today in terms of one of our ways to get traction. Because as we get busy, it's really easy to just get in the flow of work without thinking about what is the pause point for us to look at things. So hopefully you will join us for an upcoming program, maybe mentor coaching. We also have Ivana here today. We've got Group Coaching Essentials and also the Advanced Practicum. So for those that have done Essentials, you might be wanting a bit more practice and, more importantly, confidence, bringing group coaching or team coaching into your bones. And we have our first of probably 4 or 5 practicums starting this Friday. So if you've been on the fence about it, definitely reach out or head on over to GroupCoachingEssentials.ca, because that first cohort is going to start at 12 noon on Friday the 12th. So with that, that's our little what's happening in our ecosystem. Upcoming calls, we'd love for you to join us live, although I know for so many of you, you catch the recording afterwards. You'll find these recordings over at our YouTube channel, which is Effective Group Coach. And upcoming calls are going to be bi-weekly. So today is the 9th of the month. Our next call is 2 weeks today, which will take us to the 23rd of January. And really, if you look at the first quarter, it's going to be a bi-weekly schedule. A couple of our upcoming call topics, which I think will be of interest, and we'll go deeper into what we're touching on today, things like evaluation. It's interesting, I think, really, what does it mean to grow and get better as a coach? A really important part of this process is getting feedback from your clients. And if you've ever been with us in a Potentials Realized program, you'll know that we're really old school. We do invite people to take time to fill out an old, handwritten or word-based document. We may evolve that to a shorter form, but we know that your feedback helps us continue to provide, I think, outstanding programming, right? Our programs have been recognized by different ICF awards over the years, from receiving the Prism Award in 2016 to actually getting an award in 2022 for outstanding contribution to the field. And I think it's really critical that we continue to learn and hear from you as alumni what you love, what you need, and that helps us continue to support you and be this one-stop shop. So we're going to talk evaluation because we want to draw back the curtain on some of the things we've done with our clients, whether they've been individuals, teams, or organizations, because we've also been hearing from you as our coach clients, what do I need to do to evaluate programming? Or I've received a request and they're asking for ROI. How do I go about that? So stay tuned for that upcoming call on evaluation. We will also be doing some work around business development. We are in 2024 in, a challenging economic environment. With challenge comes opportunity, I think is the important thing to note. And being prepared with a quick proposal template can make or break your chances of success, right? Time is everything in today's market. Quick story, I got a call or an email last week from someone saying, hey, could we meet with you? We're interested in maybe having a team retreat. As I had to email back, I'm not back to work until Monday. They want a date at the end of this month. So that time is really flexible, or not flexible. It's really quite urgent. And as you might appreciate in today's world, most proposals go out to multiple organizations. So having something in your back pocket is useful. I'm turning something around within a 36-hour window, which will allow them to make a decision by Thursday, which really for a team is not a lot of time to get something ramped up. So I'm going to draw back the curtain on business proposal writing. I always like to say my publisher, Wiley, often used my first proposal for effective group coaching as the gold standard for their other authors. So if that says anything, come and join us 2 weeks from now. So part of today is getting back to the basics. This was a theme, and I want to give you a chance before we even dive into today's topic of, what's going to give you traction. What are the 2 or 3 things you want to be leaning into in 2024? Want to give you just 30 seconds right now with that notion of what's going to give me traction in 2024. Just note for yourself what comes to mind, because a new year creates a whole new landscape of opportunity. So take a moment, capture any words, images, icons that come to mind. What is going to give you traction in 2024? All right, I'm going to invite you, if you would like, feel free to put things in chat. I'm also just thinking about, what emerged for me. So I see the world a lot in images. If you have not checked out the quick rolling of the dice for 2024, I did a short video last week, which brought up 5 icons. The icons of experimentation, alchemy, micromonitoring, integration, and co-working. And so today I'm going to dive into some of those topics because I think each one of us gives us a bit of a lesson or an opportunity for a lesson as it relates to traction. Just as I've been sitting here, though, I think one piece that's really also critical, which we'll touch on today, is partnerships. How do we do work through others? And if you're not yet in the practice of asking people, how did you hear about me? How did you hear about my work? It's a really great question to signal or start providing signals for how are you getting found? I've asked that question already 4 times this year. One response was, oh, I found you on Google. And I was really surprised that there weren't more people doing what you're doing. That was very indicative for me of, oh, that is why I blog so regularly. Another response was, I found you through your book. So again, a lot of people think, wow, you write a lot. But one of the reasons I love to write a lot is twofold. One, it is a way to capture learning. Two, books travel much further than I ever could as a human being. And in times of good times and times of economic pressure, a lot of us could find $40 to $60 to pick up a book. We might not find a couple hundred or a couple $1,000 to invest in training. So I would invite you to think about how that too might be just an idea of, what is possible for you. Now, Rita has chimed in chat, and Rita, I hope it's okay to share with your comments. The micromanage image resonated with me, but as a self-management tool, structure would help me gain traction. I think that's a really important piece, right? I think traction, consistency, structure, especially for those of us that are maybe directing our own ship. We're entrepreneurs. And as entrepreneurs, right, we are our own bosses. One of my dad's favorite statements, he even said it to me today. I was on the phone with him a few hours ago, and he said to me, "Is your boss giving you some time off, Jennifer? You've really been burning the candle on a lot of different ends, not just professionally, but personally." And I always like it because, if I'm not going to give myself time off, who will? And as, getting traction, part of what we know about high performance is how are we renewing? How are we looking after ourselves? I'm sure I'm not the only one who's come back to work this week feeling a lot more rested than I was 2, 3 weeks ago. And yet, do we need to keep burning it down? So structure can be important because it creates routine. And routine and habits is not a central focus of today's call, but I do want to put it out on the dashboard because we know from a scientific standpoint, as I was sharing earlier today in the neuroscience program, the ability to create habits frees up cognitive ability, right? When we develop habits, they become so much more automated. And that means that we're not spending as much time on decision making. We're not spending as much energy, not just time, but the energetic cost of making decisions. And as a business owner, right, one way to get traction is to become better at making decisions. Look this up. I'm not going to go into it in depth today by any means, but there is an energetic and a scientific cost of decision making and decision fatigue. And as business owners, as coaches, we're consistently making decisions all the time. So to get traction, what might be able to switch for you, whether it's creating new routine or creating new structure? It's no surprise for me to hear how popular things like time blocking have become. Time blocking, if you're not aware of that concept, is the notion of looking at your calendar and dedicating blocks of time to certain tasks. We know that to switch from one task to another also takes some of that cognitive juice, that cognitive energy. And so a lot of really high performing creatives, especially, will have blocks of moments for their traction. So how I do this in my business, and it's one of the reasons why I've been able to write so prolifically, in years gone by, I've earmarked half-day blocks for writing, where I would physically, usually en route from getting from the pool or the gym back to my office, I would stop off at a local library and do 2 hours or 90 minutes to 2 hours of just focused work. I would not open email. I would just have a task for the day and start doing it, start writing it. And in fact, that was the impetus to get Coaching Business Builder and Plan, Do, Track out in the world in 2018. It was those micro blocks, which goes nicely hand in hand with micro monitoring. So Rita is obsessed with time blocking. Thank you for sharing that, Rita. If you'd like any tips for time blocking that you want to share verbally.
Yeah, micromanage it to the point where you can actually time block things that you think are mundane. I mean, not as much as bio breaks, but to the point where, if you need 15 minutes to not be disturbed from 12 to 12:15, then block that time out and make sure that nobody can schedule you for anything. And that even if it means you need to tell family members that you are busy, and you run to a quiet enclosed room and have that 15 minutes, then that time is yours. Like, I know that especially as a mom of a younger child, people feel like their time is indebted to everybody else, and I feel that I have to claim that time, and it's my it's my right as a human to do that. I'm not being selfish. If I need 15 minutes to myself, I demand it. So what I do is I use my calendar, and we have a home calendar as well, so that links up with, work and with other things, so that things are coordinated. Like, I literally had a discussion before I got in this call about who's going to pick up my daughter at 5:30 because we have inclement weather today. So if there's something that I need to adjust in said calendar, I will do it. I will put a note in there, right? Saying we're switching cars or something like that. I don't feel it's selfish. Some people do. They have guilt around that. But I use the calendar as the tool. I don't like paper calendars personally. I like the digital calendar because you can put reminders in as well. But I like to use it as a tool to show that time is in a certain way controllable.
Absolutely. Time is money, and time is a non-renewable resource. We can't get it back. And
Exactly.
as, as professionals, right? I think this is one of the shifts. If we work for someone else, time means something. If we work for ourselves, our time is limited. And there is a limited amount of focus that can go into, if we're working for ourselves, is this a hobby or is this a business? And I think that is one of the ongoing things to think about. What will give me traction? What is distracting me? So one of the, like, again, getting back to basics, and to Rita's point on, it might only take 15, 20 minutes to get something done. One thing that consistently distracts me are receipts and invoices, right? So how do I fit that in? And what I found myself doing in recent months is taking that back out to the library. I came back, from overseas visit, work, everything. And I had a whole bucket full of receipts. I did not want to start 2024 keeping looking at that receipt. Went to the library on Friday thinking, oh, this is going to take me like 2.5 hours. 45 minutes later, with no email disruptions, it was done. It was done and it was filed. And so think about, traction for you. What is still calling you in the face, getting you distracted? Chances are you might be able to just get it done. So it was no surprise. I'm going to just show the photo because I didn't actually put it in, but I will take off my background. But I took a photo of here we go. This year's icons. So these are the 5 icons that we're going to dive into, and you'll see all over our feeds. Experimentation is the first one here, followed by Alchemy. I'm going to dive into that today. We've talked a little bit about micro monitoring. And again, tracking is everything in the work of a coach, whether you're tracking your coaching hours, you're tracking your learning time, whether you're tracking your income. What does the data say? Now, as coaches, and this is one of the reasons why I love these community calls, it's also about co-working and coming together as community. I debated heavily whether I was going to bring back the 24 for 24. Some of you might know that in years gone by, in January, I've done the 21 for 21, 22 for 22, 23 for 23, which was earmarked time for co-working. There was a daily theme and people would come back together for co-working, which I love. Wasn't a decision that I made, but it is going to probably be something that will resurface later this year because we often do better together. And for those of you that were with me a few weeks ago for the 2023 Coaching Business Booster, it was a one-day business development program. And comments at the end of the day and after the fact were, I got a lot more done during this day than I would have done alone. We're going to be introducing a lot more of those shorter half day, one day, get it done type programs over 2024, because I think these are the things that take us back to basics and get us through the hurdles of really moving our businesses forward. Overcomplication is a challenge for so many of us. And in a complex world, we need to keep moving and generate that energy. And that takes us to our final one, integration, which I'm going to come to in just a few minutes. So thanks for the focus and bringing to the surface the, looking at our time blocking, looking at our micro monitoring. I want to take us into just a reminder of strengths. And I don't really have an image on this one, But one of the things we talked about at our 20th anniversary call were your strengths. So what are the strengths that you're leveraging all the time in your work? There are some great books out in the marketplace today. I'm thinking of, I can't remember his last name, but Zone of Genius is a really good read. If you haven't heard of it, The Zone of Genius, Gay, something is his last name. It really is a valuable book to think about, where are you spending your time? And are you spending your time in what he calls a zone of genius, which is something that only you can do? Again, in business growth, whether we're internal or external, really walking our talk around strengths is critical. And how do we help people lean into strengths when things may not be effective or working well in an organizational environment? So our first of 5 areas today to just draw attention to is strengths. Also, this notion of consistent action, right? Again, consistency is key. This is one of the bedrocks of the Coaching Business Builder Plan, Do, Track methodology. And the notion is, in times of disruption and in times where we're really looking to exponentialize growth, we want to undertake consistent action. So 30-second pause here for you to think about one of your goals for the year, or one of your goals for Q1. You can even make it like really specific, Q1 goal. What is going to give you momentum around this goal in the next few months? And when you're thinking about that momentum towards that goal achievement, what is the consistent action you can undertake daily, 5 times a week, 3 times a week, or some other frequency? Wherever you started your notes for today's call, I want to invite you to think about, what is the consistent action you're going to start getting into or continue getting into to get that momentum towards your goal. So maybe you have a sales goal. That sales goal might involve having conversations. What is the conversation you're going to have every day for the next 90 days? Or if it's about writing, what is that time block you're going to earmark? I'm going to be quiet right now for 45 seconds, and I'll invite you to note for yourself and even put in your schedule for this week the consistent action and when the consistent action is going to happen. All right. We're going to move to experimentation. This, of course, is one of the icons that emerged out of the Reconnecting Workspaces. And experimentation is a really interesting counterpoint to that consistent action, right? In experimentation, there may be things that we are trying out consistently and not quite sure where it's going to take us. Our endpoint is the micromonitoring, seeing what does the data show. So it's the beginning of a new year. Maybe you're watching this at a different time of year, and that's fine. But what are the things you want to be experimenting with? Maybe it's, I want to try, for me, I'm trying out TikTok. So on TikTok this quarter, and my handle is at Group Coach, no surprise. I'm actually doing a 3-minute video every day on the 90-day guide for success. And that's a guide for onboarding in a new job or reboarding in a 90-day sprint cycle. And so it looks at topics like, how do I get my traction happening over 90 days? We've looked at things like getting your office organized, being clearer on your role, thinking about what elements of team effectiveness are useful. So experimentation has been the name of the game of that book. It came out into the world in Q4 of 2021. And how I introduced it to the world was through Clubhouse. I don't know if you remember what Clubhouse was, but it was an audio channel And the experimentation was to see, was Clubhouse this whole vehicle that everyone was saying it was? Well, it didn't draw a lot of attention, but there were a core group of people who went through 90 days of focus with the book and saw tremendous results. So again, as a coach, what is the experimentation you want to do? Is there something you want to get data around? Is there something you want to test out and see if what you think is what the data is going to give you? Because sometimes it doesn't work out in the way we think we will. So 30 seconds, 45 seconds again, watch the experiment you want to make, maybe this quarter, if we frame it like in a shorter time, around one of your key goals. What is something you can experiment with? Write it down. And as we get to the end of the half hour, any shares on this, Jay, Rita? Anything you want to share on what your experiment is?
For me, it's been diving more into the social media. So I've played around a bit with LinkedIn, but I'm now expanded. I've just put my first post yesterday out on Instagram. I'm starting to do Facebook. I have a TikTok account now, but I haven't actually used it. But I have been getting some traction with LinkedIn, just particularly around the relationship building. So I'm, kind of trying to not spread myself too thin, but also at the same time opening up new doors to see what might come out of that.
Yeah, and I love that you're saying, don't want to spread myself too thin. So experimentation every quarter, and why I keep going back to these 90-day windows, is it provides us a long enough time to start seeing algorithm changes. And maybe as I think you've been doing, Jay, you've been doubling down on your LinkedIn. So yeah, now what's the one other you want to add on this quarter? And after 90 days, I did an Instagram experiment a few years ago. I could really see how that was creating an uplift. And again, consistency is key. You stop doing it, it drops back. So invitation to really think about experimentation in different ways. And for Rita as well, branding is something she wants to experiment with, and possibly a website or social media. So think about that. The last one I want to leave us with is alchemy. And alchemy is a really interesting area. Again, slightly different image here. This image here also incorporates the different elements. So in my work as an environmentalist, and many people don't think of me here as an environmentalist, but that's who I am at my core. There's something extremely powerful about when we can bring together the four elements, right? When we think about air and water and fire, like what does that fusion create? So alchemy went to the dictionary, Oxford Dictionary has it as a noun, a seemingly magical process of transformation, creation, or combination. And there's something that can be very mystical about alchemy. There can also be something very scientific about alchemy. And we can look at the history beyond this, but I found it really interesting in rolling this year's dice that alchemy came up, as well as integration, right? There's a relationship here between alchemy and integration. Integration being that action or process of combining two or more things in an effective way. And so when I went to write Effective Group Coaching back in 2008, 2009, it was a very different landscape. In those days, everyone was like, oh, you can't bring coaching to groups. Well, here we are, 2024. Of course we could bring coaching to groups, and it's very effective. Now, that is not the edge of innovation of our industry or any industry. And I want to really get you thinking about what is the combination factor that's going to support you in your work, or maybe your clients. So there's an option here in our final reflection piece. What is either the integration, that process of combining two or more things in an effective way, or you might think of it more as the alchemy. What is the alchemy mix of having this process of permutation, of change because of bringing things together? I want to give you another 45 seconds to think about, what is that piece for you in 2024? Write it down on your same piece of paper. So as we go to wrap up today, the call today was really about what's going to give you traction in 2024. We've talked about micro-monitoring. We've talked about looking at alchemy and integration. These are all great things, but they are external to us. And part of our stance here at Potentials Realized is that mastery as a group coach is not just about learning the tools and things we can do, but it's also about working on our unique ecosystem. This is at the heart of Coaching Business Builder, Plan, Do, Track in Section 4. If you joined us for our 20th anniversary year-end call, we spent a lot of time throughout that 3 hours building up your own unique ecosystem through our activities and presentations that day. Again, you can check out that 20th anniversary year-end call on our YouTube channel at Effective Group Coach. Part of the work that I'm going to be continuing to do this year is really with handfuls of coaches in a couple of programs. So we have, of course, our Activate program, which is activating your coaching superpowers. As you look at the tree, it really is about leaning into our strengths and being very clear on what do we take a stand for as a coach, and where do we need to learn to adjust and get more like that willow of the ability to shift and change and grow in order to support all the opportunities that exist out there in the diversity of clients we serve. Coaches do need to deepen their roots, but I think there's also a really important piece around fluidity that we need to keep developing as we grow and as we serve different audiences, different client groups. So I want to leave you with this question of what's your ecosystem for 2024? That involves the relationships, it involves our support systems, it involves our values and our opportunities, and just how we want to show up in the world. And I hope that you'll continue joining us in these weeks ahead on Tuesdays, typically from 12 to 12:30, as we're going to wrap up in a minute, to really come together for dialogue, or at least a little bit of reflective pause for exploration. So I just want to check in. Jay, Rita, thank you for staying with us through this. What is your takeaway from today's call?
Well, I'll definitely start. I can say there's lots to think about, lots to ruminate on, and really just sort of developing a really nice vision. And I love these environmental devices, because it allows me to see things organically as well. And that'll allow me to develop some really clear set goals and be able to take them into reality. So this was really great. Thank you.
My pleasure. And again, one thing that I'm sort of sensing or maybe intuiting this year, we've gone through so many years of in-office work. How do we bring the outside in? How do we really come back to nature in many respects? And personally, straddling now, central Ontario, which is not the north by any means, but it is more remote than southern Ontario, with the Caribbean, right? Like, it's like I realize that I have been hungry for spending more time outdoors. It's where my roots were. It's what I love to do. And so even on a snowy day, how do I incorporate more of the outside in the work that I do? So Jay, how about you? Where you're at with your journey? What is today's takeaway?
For me, the time blocking, I think it's that that managing, because I have a lot on my plate, and it's like, yeah, that prioritizing, and then actually putting time aside for, okay, this is, and like you said, if you get rid of all the distractions and focus on that, usually takes half the time you actually feel like it's going to take. So I'm thinking, okay, yeah, libraries down the road, coffee shops are down the road. It would be nothing for me to just, make that little shift and probably get, again, that focus time, get a lot more done in my time than if I were to just sort of sit in the office here and sometimes kind of languish.
Yeah, and languishing is good. And, what would it be like if we can use the languishing time on a non-work time? Because as entrepreneurs, work is always going to be there for us. It will never stop. And yet we can't renew if we're thinking about work 24/7.
I think that's my biggest excitement about my shift now, is that if I find my brain getting stuck or something like that, it's like I'll get up and I'll go away, and I don't have to answer a phone or be available, and I can recharge, refocus, and stuff like that. Whereas in my employment, I was like always had to be ready to pick up the phone, or team answer a Teams message or something like that, and that's something I've been able to, I can shed now. So
And it's a good practice. I think we can find ourselves, and I'll speak from personal experience. Often it's like, oh, I should be available, but what are we modeling, right? Part of our work as coaches, I think for many of us, whether it's under leadership or entrepreneurship, is helping people find, more time or focus time, as Rita said, for themselves. It's not a guilty pleasure to have 15 minutes, like everyone deserves to have time to think. So how do we model that for ourselves? Well, thank you for being here. I'll look forward to our next connection, whatever that is. And if you want to join us live, usually you will always find the link, the Zoom link for this. Not widely published just because of security issues, but you could usually head on over to our Facebook page at Effective Group Coaching, or if you're on our newsletter, I put that in on a regular basis. So we'll see you in 2 weeks. 2 weeks today is going to be, I think, about business proposals. So anyone interested in proposal writing, join us. And the one after that will be evaluation mid-February. All right. Take care. We'll see you
thanks.
soon.
Bye.
Thank you. Bye.
Bye.